What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Travis. Of course, this is TWA Motorsports, and today we are on the Tahoe. So in the last video on the Tahoe, you guys saw that I took the roof rack off, got me some little painted screws up there. I'm liking it more and more, but we got to get this thing dropped, and that is what we are doing today. We are dropping this thing. It's probably going to take me a course of a couple days just because of timing and whatnot, but you guys will all see it in one video. But stuff that we've got, and I will list in the description down below. I'm still waiting on one more box, but we've got all Beltec parts other than one DJM part. We'll talk about that later on in the video. As we use these parts, I'll talk about what each one of them represents and what we're going to be doing. But we are getting it started today, and I think we're going to start with the back because the very first thing we need to do is cut off the factory bump stops, otherwise known as the free travel mod. I'm going to show you guys a step-by-step video here. I know I've done that in the past on Tahoes and trucks. I'm going to do it on this Tahoe as well because it is a little bit different, being that it's four-wheel drive and it has a torsion bar setup. So we're going to get the back off the ground, get started back here, like I said, with cutting that bump stop off, and that is really the hardest part in the back. But I will show you guys step by step on that as well. It's not too bad once you've done it. So let's go grab some wheel chocks, chalk this thing up, get the back off the ground, and we'll get started. So we have it off the ground, and a couple things, guys. I'm using the center of the differential to lift it up, and I hope you're not getting a ton of wind noise, but it's really windy today. Anyway, I'm using the center of the differential to lift it, and then I have my jack stands. If you can see your lower control arm bolt right here, I have it on the thickest part of the frame. So there's a thin part of the frame right here. I'm right in front of that, and the reason we're going to do that is I need as much suspension travel in the back as possible in order to get access to the bump stop that we're cutting off. So now that we have it off the ground, I'm going to go ahead and let the jack down, and the suspension will come down. We'll get the wheels off, and you'll have more room to work. Now that we have the wheel off, let's take a look at what we are cutting, and that is this guy right here. Now, the upside to these style trucks is, see, they're hollow on the inside. On the newer style stuff, these actually connect, so you have to cut this section here. And generally what I do, a lot of people use a Sawzall. You don't have as much control because the blade bends. I use just a cutoff wheel on my grinder, and I grind it, basically cut it right here, and I leave this section. Now you can get real crazy and knock all this down if you want, and I probably will brush it down with a flap wheel once I'm finished, but this is going to be a lot easier than what I normally do. So what I normally do is I cut it here, and then I pry it down and cut the backside. That way you're not having to get in and cut the back of, or get under the truck and trying to cut going this way. It just seems to work best for me. I will tell you, on the newer stuff, I generally cut here also, a relief cut, so I have basically it's easier to bend this down. It's really hard to bend it all at once. We'll just have to try it on this. I may have to do the same thing, but let's get started with just a cutoff wheel on my grinder. So a couple things to keep in mind before you start. Obviously you don't want to get into the frame, so cut below that. You can see where the frame's at up top here, especially because it's hollow, and you need some sort of eye protection. I use a face shield just because it seems like goggles fog up, and these don't fog up as much. So you can see I did pop the bump stop out because it was hitting the spring, but got it bent down, and I did put a new cutoff wheel on so I have a little more reach, and we're gonna go ahead and knock the backside off. Now we got this thing off, you can see how much more travel we're gonna have with that out of the way. This is where your normal bump stop was, and it sticks down here. So with the shorter bump stop and this out of the way, you have so much more, and that's why they call it the free travel mod. Technically, The free part is that you don't have to buy like a C-notch or anything. So we're finished up here. I am going to knock this down with a cutoff wheel and then just spray it with some paint to keep it, or not a cutoff wheel, but a flap wheel, just to keep it from rusting. I'm going to spray some stuff on it, but we'll move on to the other side. There's a little trick on the other side because the gas tank's there, but I'll show you that when we get over there. So there's two things that I wanted to show you on this side, and I'm sorry guys, the wind is crazy, but I did have to make a relief cut, or I made a relief cut here. I don't know that I had to, but this one's way longer, so I just figured it'd be a little easier on me. So I already cut the front side, but before I cut the back, this is your gas tank right here, and it is plastic. So what I do is I've got an extra piece of metal, just a it actually is off the side of a computer, just some scrap metal, and I stick it up in between here just so if I get through this, I don't want to go directly into the tank. So I mean, you can be really careful and just not hit it, but I like to have an additional piece of metal like this in there just to ensure that there's no issues. Now I'm not going to show you guys the rest of this side because it's identical to the other side. I did just want to show you that one little thing before I finish this up. So I'm going to get this off and then we'll start the disassembly of all the rear components. Now that we have the bump stop cut off and I've sprayed a little bit of paint on there, which looks a lot better, we are ready to start taking the rear end apart. So I'm going to go ahead and lift the rear end up a little bit. The very first thing I did though before that is I did spray all the components we're going to be taking apart. So the upper sway bar end link on both sides, I did spray that with some penetrating oil, and then same thing on the shock because we're going to have to take it off, and the lower control arm. So it'll make more sense once we get it apart, but the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to knock the like I said, I'm going to lift the rear end up a little bit, get some pressure off of these end links. I'm going to take those off. I'm going to take them completely out, top and bottom, and then I'm going to take the shock out. And then once I get the shock, I'm not going to take the top of the shock loose because I don't have my new shocks yet. And so we're going to try this with the factory shocks for now until those come in. But 21 millimeter on the bottom of the shock, 18 millimeter on this guy. If you need it to keep from spinning, you're going to have to put something in the center. It is a 6 millimeter that goes in the center of this guy. It's just a hex or an Allen, and that should be all you need really. An 18, a 21, and then the sway bar, which we'll talk about a little later because we're going to have to move it around. But I'm going to set you guys up on the tripod. We're going to get this stuff off, and then we should be able to get the rear end down low enough to pull the springs out. So now that we got both the shock bolts out and the sway bar end links just on the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and let the jack down, and that should relieve all the pressure on the spring. You'll see as I let it down here. Now you should have a loose spring, and you may have to push it up, move it around here. We can now get the old spring out of the way. Pretty simple, and we'll go do the same on the other side. Now that the springs are out, I'm going to go ahead and take this off because we will not be reusing it. The new one, we got new ones to replace this with. So same 18 on the outside, 6 millimeter in the center if it starts to spin, which it almost always does. Now that we have the springs out, I did lift the rear end a little bit just to give me some more access. I need to take out the 21 millimeter that holds this bottom trailing arm in place. So the reason we're having to do this is we are going to put, basically this is an extension, because when you get it low, the angles on these are out of whack. So this DJM kit, which I'll list in the description, basically puts it back into alignment because of the length, or basically the amount that we're lowering it. So I do recommend this anytime you go 4 inches or more. which is what we are going to be doing. So let's grab the 21mm. We'll knock this out of place. Now guys, I will tell you, I only like to do this one side at a time, because when you take both of them out, it seems like the rear end wants to roll back too much, and you'll never get this back into place without a couple people. So do this one side at a time, and I'll show you. It comes with all the hardware, and this kit also comes with new sway bar links, which will be one of the last things we do. But like I said, anytime you're doing 4 inches or more, I do recommend this. Now that we got that loose, I did loosen this just a bit in order to get the arm. It's almost spring loaded, so it wants to stay up there. So I loosened this just a little bit in order to get it out of the way. This is how this mounts. So on the outside, there's bolts that bolt in the center here, and then the bolts that comes with the kit bolts it obviously here and here, and then we use the factory bolt to bolt back to the bottom. So I'm gonna go grab that hardware and we'll get this thing into place. So we've got the hardware that comes with the kit, and I've got this piece up into place. You'll notice there's a hole, there's an existing hole. Oh, sorry guys. There's an existing hole in the bottom, and these are not side specific, so that's why it has 2 holes in it. You don't need 2 bolts, but you're gonna have one that comes in from the bottom like this, and then your 2 on the side. Now, one thing I wish the manufacturers would do, these are 3/4, and everything else on the car is metric, so I wish that they would all be metric, just like the rest of the car, but that's little tedious things that really probably doesn't matter. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt this thing into place. I don't really have a good angle. I'll try to show you guys from the top, but then I'll show you once it's all installed before I put the lower control arm back into place. I have them all in. I wanted to show you guys before I actually tighten them down how I did this. So I always put the bottom one in first, and then I line up the top ones. So now we're gonna go ahead and tighten them down. You can also see that the head of the bolt is on the outside, and the head of the bolt is on the inside on the bottom one. So just want to show you guys the orientation of all the bolts. Now we can go ahead and snug them down. Now there's no torque specs on these. I just get them snug, or at least you want to see threads coming through the nylock locking portion, but just good and tight. Now that they're all tightened up, we can go ahead, or I was going to go ahead and put the lower control arm back into place. Now, originally I said don't undo both sides at the same time because the rear end wants to roll, but I'm not getting enough roll in order to get this hooked back up. So I'm going to have to do the other side. The odd links between the two sides are causing me not to be able to put this back into place. So what I normally do is I put a ratchet strap on the bottom, hook it to the frame, and pull it forward. But like I said, the other side is binding up, and I've only done this on the newer vehicles, so like the newer Tahoe. So we're gonna have to go ahead and do this on the other side. Go ahead and unbolt all this same stuff and get this new arm into place, and then we should be able to roll the rear end under and get these hooked back up. So that's my next step. I'm going to go to the other side. We'll whip it out real quick. I won't show you guys that process. It's the exact same on the other side. And then we'll move on to the shock relocators, which will go back here, and we'll get these arms back into place before we finally put the springs in. So I got this other side on, and I went to put the shock extension in place, which is our next step, and I noticed that it's going to have to go underneath of this. So I had to loosen. What I did was I left these bolts in place. I just loosened them up. I took the bottom one out that comes into this relocation bracket, and then we can sneak in the Beltec, which I'll list in the description as well. But probably if I would have bought DJM shock extensions, this wouldn't be an issue, but maybe it would. I'm not really sure. So it's not a big deal. One thing I will tell you though is you're going to have to buy a little bit longer bolt unless you have one, because it's going to have to be going through not only the shock extension, but it's going to have to go through that relocation bracket as well. So not a huge deal. I'm going to go ahead. These are side specific, and let me see if I can get this off so I can show you. You can see the Y, we're on the driver's side, points towards the center, and like I said, they are side specific. You may have to pop these on. I've got a rubber mallet here just because the powder coating kind of takes up some of the room. So we're going to go ahead, put this into place, and then we have a bolt with a spacer in between it, and this just keeps it from smashing this down as you're tightening it up. So I'm going to get this all together, put the bolts in that come with it, and then we'll show you guys kind of the finished product. I'm going to go ahead and retighten everything back up. Now that we have this tightened back up, I did find a bolt, and I tightened the sides back up. It fits nice and snug now. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this guy up, and I believe they call for 70 foot-pounds on this. The shock, however, I'm going to wait. That'll be one of the last things I hook up. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and put my bump stops in. So the bump stops are actually going to go up here in this hole, and they're going to face up. So as opposed to the ones that we cut off the frame that face down, these will actually face up. So I'm going to go grab those. We'll put those in. Once they're in, then we'll move the lower control arm into place and get the bolt back in there. Hopefully we can slide this over. It generally isn't an issue. Like I said, generally I use a ratchet strap on the bottom of the rear end and pull the bottom forward. So I'm gonna go grab those bump stops and I'll show you what they look like. Here's our new bump stops. They're from Beltec also, and it's just a 1/2 inch on the bottom side of them. And there is on the inside, there is a Allen key, and it's just a random size. I'm not even really sure what size it is, but I will tell you guys it's easier to access this with the control arm out of the way. I say that, probably gonna make a liar out of me. Anyway, we're gonna bolt this on and get it tightened down. I'm gonna go ahead and do that on both sides. Now we have both our bump stops in on both sides. I have got my ratchet strap hooked up, and I've got it hooked on the back side here. You guys can see it, and I've got it going to the frame. And so what that's going to do, as you'll see, is it's rolling the rear end towards me so I can get that bolt into place. So it's doing it on both sides. So loosening this one side at a time actually has been, or both sides being loose at the same time actually has helped. Like I said, on the newer ones, I've not had to do this. I've been able to loosen one side at a time, but we're gonna go ahead and get these bolts in here. I'm not gonna tighten any of the suspension, the parts that move up, until we have the thing on the ground and a load on the suspension. But for now, I do wanna go ahead and get those bolts in, and so that's our next step. If you guys just saw me put the factory bolt into place, that is actually not what you're going to use. It's not long enough. So the kit does come with a new bolt and nut, and it's a nylock nut as well. I'm coming in with a bolt like this, just like the factory did as well. Now that we have the bolts in and just ran down, like I said, I didn't tighten them yet, we are ready to get the spring into place. So that is what we've got here, guys. We've got new springs, and let me grab my other one. Look at the difference in size between the two. So, and then these other things, these are helper bags. So I've got to fold those up and get them inside here. Now how that's gonna work is this little cap comes off, just vacuum. And we gotta fold them up, and I will tell you guys that a lot of times I put these in some hot water, especially it's chilly outside today, so they don't wanna fold up quite like you want them. If you get them in some hot water, they'll get way more pliable. Obviously you don't want water in them, so just be cautious not to get water inside of them. But we need to put that into place. Now, once we get the airbag inside of here, you're gonna have to run the line out of the top side. So what you'll see is, take this off, well, I'm not even gonna take it off, but there's a hole in the top here. I'm gonna make that just a hair bigger. It probably isn't gonna matter really, but we're gonna route that line straight up, and there is a spot where you can route this up above. So basically I'm gonna go shove these into place, and then I'll probably grab my air lines just because it's gonna be a little too hard to do all of this at the same time. And basically I'll show you what it looks like once the bags are in here and ready to install. So as you can see, I have the bags inside. So what we need to do is we need to take the factory isolators off the bottom. We're going to put it into place here. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the top one. Now believe me, they don't want to stay, so you're going to have to monkey around with them as you're putting them on. But we're going to run this right through that hole, and I decided not to make it any bigger because it's big enough without having to do anything. Get these into the pocket they go in, and then we're going to take the plug off the center and plug this airbag in. Maybe easier said than done. And this is just a push connection, so you don't have to use anything. Once it's on there, it's on there. Now, once we have that on, we are good to put this spring into place. Now, I'll show you guys here in a second. There's a hole up above the spring pocket where this line will route nice and easy. So if you notice, first of all, I've got some light glaring, but there's a hole in the center of this, obviously where the spring mounts. So we are going to take our line right above that. Now, on this side, you need to make sure and steer clear of the exhaust. So I'm going to go back with it, but we can monkey with that or move it around once we get the spring into place. So basically I'm going to route it towards the back, and we're going to find a place to put the schrader valve and the tie up somewhere on the other side. I'd really like to put it in the gas storage, which is what I'm hoping to do. But let's get the spring into place, and you'll see me messing with the line as I go in, but that's pretty normal. Once we get this spring in, I'm just going to let it set on this bottom perch here. We'll go put the other one in, and then we'll be able to lift the rear end and make sure they're seated properly. So now that your springs are in and you've got the line ran up through the top portion of the actual spring perch on top, we need to start to lift the rear end until they get it into the pocket. So while you're doing that, it'd be nice if you had two people, one to run the jack while you're under there, but you can do it by yourself, which is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to lift the jack, and we're just going to have to center those springs within that pocket up above. So that is the next step that you're going to see me doing. And at the same time, you're going to be pulling slack out of the line that we put into the airbag. So kind of a lot going on at one time, and you really got to do both sides at one time. So we're jacking from the center. Obviously we're going to have to line up both at the same time. So depending on where your jack is in the center of the differential, one side might go up a little sooner than the other side. So just be advised that you need to go back and forth and check from side to side. Now that we have the spring in their pocket, you can notice that they're not moving around, and I made sure that my line wasn't getting pinched up above. We are good to start reassembling some things. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and torque this guy down. This is our shock bracket, and this gets torqued to 60 foot-pounds, so this guy here. And then we can go ahead and put the shock bolt into place. I'm not going to torque that down, like I said, until the suspension is loaded, so we'll leave that for last. I am going to go ahead and put the bolt in, though. Now that we have both sides of these torqued down to 60 foot-pounds, we have the shock bolt into place, and I just have the nut threaded on the other end. I did go ahead and route my lines over to this corner, because like I said, I'm going to try to use like where you open the gas lid. I'm going to try to put it over there. So I went, hopefully you guys can see, I went up above the frame rail there, right down the frame into right here. And then this one here, I came over the spare tire. Let me go over to the other side and I'll show you kind of how I routed it over here, and I just zip tied this into place. Now this kit does come with zip ties, but I always keep zip ties around. You can see I came out of that pocket. I went up above the frame there and down this line right here. I zip tied it here, zip tied it again here, and then over the spare tire to that other side. So we now have the two leads over there ready to go. But I think the next step here, guys, is we do have to relocate the sway bar. So it does come with, the kit comes with new end links, and this isn't a kit, this is parts that I've just used over time and I know they work. So that the new sway bar end links actually come with the relocations of this. You can buy these separate. If you're doing like a 3-inch drop, you can get different ones as well, but we do have to slide the sway bar over, and the reason is it needs clearance on this side over here. So I'm gonna go grab a 10mm, because we're gonna have to take these D-rings loose. It's a 10mm on both sides there. I'm not going to take it completely off. I am on that side, but this side here we can just loosen up, and that's just going to give us the ability to slide it over. So I'll go grab that stuff, and then we'll talk about what we have to do to relocate it. So now that we have this loose, we need to move the sway bar over. Basically, it needs to go 2 inches. You see that hole right there? So this hole right here. We're gonna have to drill another one on the other side. So we're gonna line up the back of this with that hole, and then we need to drill a hole on the front side in order to be able to relocate it. Now the kit does come with new hardware to get in here, but I'm gonna use a marker. I'm gonna mark this real quick. We'll drill this out. That way we'll have 2 holes to remount the D-ring, and it has slid over about 2 inches. If you measure from the original hole that we had it mounted to right here to this guy, it's about 2 inches over. So you can either, like I said, put something in here and keep it steady while you mark it, or you can just measure equal distance over. So you can see I have the hole drilled now, and we're ready to bolt this up. The kit does come with new hardware, 9/16, which sucks because everything's metric, but I'm gonna go ahead and put this thing up into place. We'll get it snugged down, and then we'll be able to get our end links into position. Now I have the sway bar D-ring there tightened down, well, at least snugged down for now. I'm gonna have to move the bar back and forth, so I didn't want to go ahead and tighten it down. Same thing with the other side, I haven't tightened it down yet. But we're ready to put the end links in. Now they are quite a bit different from the factory ones that were in there, as they're both the same size from the factory. So the way I have it set up right now is this is the driver's side, the straight one, and then this is the passenger side. I don't know why they don't do this, but you have to put the grease certs in. Be careful not to cross thread them, try to get them in as straight as possible. Don't over tighten them or they will snap off on you, just from past experience. So it comes with new bolts for the bottom, and also washers, which I have setting up there. But for the top, you're going to reuse your factory hardware, and those bolts are setting up there as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these into place. We'll get them just lightly finger tight down, and then I'll kind of go back and show you what everything looks like. So as you can see now, we have the upper portion bolted in place, but in order to get the bottom to line up, we're gonna have to lift the rear end a little bit. So just so you know, the outer side here, so the sway bar goes on the outside here, and it goes on the inside on the driver's side. Now it's going to be very close to the strut or shock, but as the strut or shock compresses, it shouldn't be as close. Now I'm going to be replacing those very soon. Like I said, I've been waiting on those, but I wanted to go ahead and start this process. So let's get the rear end lifted up, and then we will get those into place. It's gonna be pretty low, guys. Sorry, my jack's so squeaky. be pretty close to where we need to be in order to swing those up and get those bolts in. Because this sway bar will swing. All right, that'll work. So now I'm gonna go grab the bolts. I'm gonna have to bend this a little bit, and we'll get them into place. Once we have the bolts in, and you can see they're all going that direction. So the head of the bolt is on the outer side of the sway bar. Same thing on that side. So that is the way they mount. I have not tightened those up yet. That's something I'm gonna do with the suspension loaded as well. So what I am going to do is I'm gonna go ahead and tighten up our two 10 millimeters that were on our D-ring there, and tighten up the other side. And then I'm gonna go ahead and route my lines here that are hanging down up into the gas tank area. Or at least that's where I'm hoping to put them. And we'll get the wheels on this thing, and I'll probably go ahead and squirt a little grease in these grease certs while I've got access, a little better access to them anyway. And we'll get this thing on the ground and start to torque some stuff down. So right about here is where I think I want to mount the schrader valve for the airbags. So I think I'm just going to drill a small hole there, and basically it comes with two schrader valves in case you want to air these up individual. I'm going to use the T that comes with the kit in order to tee this off. So I'm going to get a drill bit. We're going to drill a hole there about the size of this guy here, and I think I have enough room to sneak it back behind here and get it tightened down. At least I'm hoping, because that is where I want it. You can hear my cows going, not my cows, but my neighbor's cows are going crazy over there. Anyway, I'm going to drill that hole, and we'll see if we can get this teed off and up here where I'd like to have it. So as you can see, I have my hole drilled here, and I have the end piece on, and then I went ahead and put my T into place. And so now I'm gonna have to get lucky and see if I can thread that up in there without knocking this washer off, which I think I probably can. I may end up taping it, I don't know. But yeah, let's get that up in there, and then obviously there's another washer and nut that goes on the other side, so you can cinch it down wherever you're gonna mount it. But I think that is our next step. We'll get that up into place. I'll show you guys once it's all finished up. Well, it was actually a little easier than I thought, because I was able to sneak my hand all the way up to the hole. So that worked out. Now all I have to do is keep it steady while I tighten it up, and it's just a 1/2 inch, so shouldn't be hard at all. And then we'll get a cap on it, and boy guys, then we're ready to drop or at least put the wheels on this thing and drop it down and start to tighten some stuff up. So let's go ahead, get the wheels on this thing, we'll get it down on the ground, and then we'll go back and tighten up everything that needs to be tightened, and take a good look at the back. Wow, it's low. It's definitely lower, guys. All right, I'm gonna jack this thing up, get the jack stands out from under it. I may end up having to put some of my DSC wheel stands under it so I can get under it to torque stuff, just because of how low it is. It's pretty low. So let's lift it up, get those jack stands out, and we'll go from there. So yeah, I would call this pretty low in the back, guys. It is, I mean, it's pretty obvious. So yeah, I went ahead and grabbed my wheel stands. I'm gonna jack this thing up, put it on the wheel stands, that way the suspension has weight on it, so we could torque up all those things that we didn't torque while it was up in the air. So once we get that finished up, I'll talk about the torque specs while I'm doing them, but we're gonna move on to the front. And well, it'll all be in one video, but I think it's going to be another day just because I'm running out of daylight and it is getting ready to rain. So let's get this thing lifted up. We'll get that stuff torqued down in the back, and well, then we'll move on to the front. So we're going to start by tightening up the sway bars, the end links anyway, and they don't really have a torque spec. You just don't want to over tighten them because they do have to move. So I'm just going to snug them down. Not going to get real crazy tightening those. I don't really have, like I said, there's not a torque spec on them, and DJM doesn't list one either. So just going to go ahead and tighten those down. Once we get those, we do need to tighten the bottom of the shock down to 70 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go do those two things on both sides. You can see my shock is not tight. And the sizes here, guys, 3/4 on the bottom, 18 on the top, as I complained about earlier. And then this is your stock shock bolt and nut, so that is 21. And then we will move up to the front side here, which is an oddball size. I think it's 13/16. Really odd there, but that, and then you, as you know, I did loosen the front lower control arm as well, so we'll torque it as well. But I'll start here doing these, and like I said, 70 here. I don't know these yet, so I'm gonna have to look that up, and then I'll talk about that right before I do it. Now we have the shock tightened up to 70 foot-pounds, just like in the instructions, and I just snugged down the sway bar end links. I also greased those up. Make sure you put grease in those. Now, I'm getting some conflicting information from different sources. So online on the Tahoe forums, they're saying 140 foot-pounds on these. That is way too tight. There is no way it's that tight. So in past experience with F-bodies, which is the exact same setup and the exact same arm size and even the exact same bolt size, they torque to 72 foot-pounds. So I'm going to torque them to 72, and if I have a bunch of knocking or clanging around, then we will revisit that. But 72 is what I'm going to go ahead and torque the front and back to. Well, we have everything tightened down on the back underneath, and the only things, guys, that I think I might run into is obviously I'm waiting on those shocks. These shocks are just bottomed out. There's no way this is going to ride good. The other thing is I think my bump stop's a little tall. So in the description I will list a shorter bump stop. Chances are it's just going to ride on the bump stop, and that would make for a pretty rough ride. So I'm going to go with the shorter bump stop that I'll list in the description. I'll replace that off camera. Obviously when I get new shocks I will show you guys that. I'm not sure if I'll show you that in this video, but now let's get it down off of this. We'll test the air stuff later on once we finish up the front, but let's just get this thing flipped around, or I might work on it like this, I don't know, and let's get started on the front. So now on to the front, guys. I've been driving this thing around for about 2 weeks with the back lowered, and I did go ahead and crank the torsion bars down, and so on the front, obviously this is a torsion bar truck, I cranked them to max level down, and just to make it look less stupid. I mean, it looks pretty ridiculous, like it's going uphill all the time. That's what my wife told me anyway. But it's the first day I've had off in a while, and as you can see, there's still ice and snow on the ground, but we're gonna start on the front. Now for the front, I bought a couple things. I bought torsion bar keys, which you see here. I bought new upper A-arms to fix the, basically the camber issue, because you're gonna have a lot of negative camber. The wheel's gonna wanna lean in. And then we obviously have new spindles. So those three things, for sure I'm gonna put the spindles on and the upper A-arms. I'm not sure on the keys because we're really close to level, I think, once we get the spindle on. So I think what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna get the front off the ground. Obviously we're gonna chalk up the back wheels, get the front off the ground, get the wheels and tires off. So the next thing I'll show you guys is the disassembly of the front end. And like I said, if we get it down, I'm gonna go ahead and put the spindles on, show you guys how to do that. But if we get it on the ground and it's level with the spindles in place, then I might send the keys back and not use them. But I'm not really sure. We'll see. We'll kind of see and get some measurements once we get the spindles on. So I'm gonna grab the jack, roll that thing underneath it, and get started on the front. Now that we got the wheel off, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove basically this hardware. It plugs in up top here. We're going to remove that ABS line that runs down here, and then this is a 10mm we're going to take off and get that folded out of the way. Once we get that off and out of the way, then we're going to move on to taking the brake off. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take it off at the actual mounting point for the caliper bracket instead of taking the caliper separate. So those are 18s, but I'll show you guys that process. Once we get that out of the way, then we're going to go ahead and loosen this guy here. And that actually, you know what, I'm going to do this first, because if you guys are doing this without air tools, you're going to have this thing on the ground in order to get this loose. Otherwise it's just going to spin. I do have a I believe it's a 36mm. I'm going to put that on there. I'm going to go ahead and whip that off first, and then actually we'll do the brake line. Now that we got that out of the way, we can go ahead and take our brake lines loose. And I'm just using a small, like I said, a flathead screwdriver. And you kind of just pry these pieces apart, releasing the brake line. Now on the top here, it is set in the frame. So I'm going to use my tool to get it out of the frame. And then once we do that, you can see it has a plug on it. Go ahead and unplug it. And there's one more connection piece here. I mean, technically, I guess you don't have to take it loose from here, but I always do. So now that's completely out of the way. Let's get the 10mm loose for the brake line. And because we're replacing the A-arm, I'm going to go ahead and take the 10mm loose up here as well. And then generally, guys, I just like to thread this stuff back in where it came out. That way it doesn't roll off on you. It's kind of chilly today, that's for sure. Now that we got that, we'll move on to the actual brake and brake caliper. Now the next step, like I said, is to take an 18, and we need to get these loose. Chances are you're going to have to use a brake over bar because they're going to be tight. Once you get them kind of loose, then you can use your ratchet. Get the brake out of the way here. And like I said, I'm taking it loose at the bracket, not the actual caliper. And I know it probably needs some brakes soon. I mean, the pads, we got a lot of life left, but man, they're ugly. Once we get this off, I am going to hang it over there. As you can see, the line runs to the front. So I'm going to hang it over there off the sway bar for now, just so it's not putting pressure on that brake line. And then we'll be able to take the rotor off. Sometimes they have these little keepers to hold the rotor close. I never reuse those. I just take those off with a pair of needle nose pliers, and generally I break them taking them off, and I never reuse them. That's just at the factory to keep this thing from falling off. So chances are this thing's never had brakes, and it doesn't look like it's had brakes either. So maybe a project down the road, guys, for us to put brakes on this thing. And like I said, I'm going to hang it up here. You can see that I'm breaking that, taking it off, but once we do that, the caliper is now free, and we can move on to taking the actual inner work, like the spindle, or not the spindle, I'm sorry, but the I can't even think of what I'm talking about, the hub assembly out. So there's 15mm bolts. There's 3 of them, one on the top and then 2 on the back side. We're going to take those out next. And sometimes this is a little tight. It's sometimes rusted in, so you may have to tap this a little bit in order to get it out, but that's going to be our next step to get the hub assembly out. So on this top one, sometimes there's not a lot of room, so I use a smaller, normally I would use deep socket, but since there's not a lot of room, I'm going to use a smaller one. And they're generally, even though they torque down pretty tight, they're generally not too bad to loosen up. That one came pretty loose pretty quickly. Same with that one. That one's a little tighter. There we go. So now once we get these out, sometimes this thing will just fall out, but most of the time it's pretty rusty. You may have to tap around with a hammer to get it loose. Now that I got the bolts out, you can see it's pretty stuck. I like to hit it sometimes with a hammer. Sometimes you don't want to booger up your threads here. That seems to be pretty loose, so we're good there. But we need to get this guy off. I don't want to bend anything, but sometimes it needs some persuasion. And it's starting to come out now. sometimes it needs a little help. And that is definitely loose. And just take your time. Like I said, you're not wanting to get real crazy with it. Sometimes you can pry against stuff. There you go. And once you get it moving, sometimes, I'm gonna make a liar to me. Okay, there we go. And it comes out. And I'm just gonna set this to a side, or to the side, because we do have some trimming to do on the on that plate, that dust shield. But now you can see, go ahead and get our bolts out. Try to. There we go. So our next step is to start disassembling the actual spindle and get it out of the way. So at this point, we're ready to get the arm out of the place. And so there's an 18 millimeter up top here on the upper ball joint, and then the lower ball joint's a 24, which I'll take loose with my impact. And then this is an 18 as well. So just to tell you guys, I don't like using a ball joint separator because it tears up the boots. Now these top ones I'm going to be replacing, but the bottom ones I'm not. And so you can use that if you want, but I use a pretty good size hammer. So you guys are going to see me loosen all this stuff up, and I just run it down to the very end so it's still threaded on, and same thing on the bottom. And then I'm going to tap it with a hammer until it busts free, and then we'll get the old spindle out of the way. So now we're loose. I need to get this thing off. Now most of the time you don't even have to hit up here, because if you loosen it, just hitting on the bottom and top of this will loosen this guy up. So that's good. You don't have to mess with the tie rod. But you may have to lift this up a little. Get this off. And then once we get that out of the way, we will move on to the upper A-arm. Now if you guys aren't replacing those, you don't have to do that, but since I am, I'm gonna have to go grab a jack and put under this so I can get this off. So you can see I had to lift on that lower A-arm in order to get me enough room so this wasn't spinning. Once you get these things loose, they like to spin. But the old one is off, and that ball joint is definitely toast. The bottom one's not as bad, but it's not great. We're not going to replace it at this time, but we are going to go ahead and grab, I think it's 21 or 22s that take this guy off. But before I do that, let's set this down here. I'm going to mark where the eccentrics are here, so I kind of get it back in as close to alignment as possible. So just so you guys know, I'm going to mark these on both sides. I'm going to mark it on this structure that stays on the truck. I'm going to mark it on the camber piece itself, or the eccentric, on both sides. So if you see marks there, that's what I'm doing. Like I said, I'm trying to get it back in the exact same spot or as close to it. That way the drive to the alignment shop won't be as bad on my tires. My alignment shop's about 30 miles away. So let's get those wrenches. I'll mark that and we'll get those out of the way next. So hopefully you guys can see my crude little markings here. They're not real great, but like I said, I'm just trying to get it as close back to spec as possible. Marked both sides. Now I'm going to take a 21 millimeter. We're going to take these completely out of the truck. Now the other thing is, you notice this one is facing that way and the other one is facing back. I'm going to keep all of this together and kind of set it aside because that's the exact way I want it to go back in. Now if you put it in the other way, it just makes it a little harder sometimes for them to get an adjustment on it. Some alignment shops will gripe and make you change it. So just try to put it back in the same way. Another reason, guys, why I replaced this, other than the camber issue, and this has 2 degrees of extra positive camber you can adjust in, is the bushings. Look how cracked and weathered those bushings are. So it really needs to be replaced. It also gets you a ball joint at the same time. So you're basically getting the whole thing, and it's really a better deal to buy these arms at the same time. You don't have to, something I always do though. So I'm gonna take these out, and then we'll get the new one out of the box and talk about putting it back in. So now we have the old one out. I'm going to put just a little bit of silicone on these just to make them slide around a little easier. And it doesn't call for that, but just a good measure in my opinion. Now, I will tell you guys, sometimes putting this in, and there's really no wrong way because the left and right match, but you obviously need the ball joint here facing down. So the other issue you might have is sometimes your pocket is a little tight, so you may have to move it around or take your old arm and kind of move it and bend these pockets a little bit. Now, it's not a huge deal. If you bend them, they will come back into place once we start to tighten this up. But for now, all I need to do is grab those things, the eccentrics and the bolts, and put them exactly back where they need to go. And remember, one faces this way and the other one faces that way. So put them back in the exact same way you took them out. And I'm just gonna snug those up for now. I'm gonna get the rest of this together before I go really tightening it down, but I do wanna go ahead and get those into place. One thing you guys probably also noticed is this kind of gets in the way. I was able to sneak that bolt out, so I'm going to start with the front one, putting it in first, just because this is kind of a hassle. It's just a 13. If you want to take it off, maybe that would help, but that's just more stuff you got to take apart. And also, guys, sorry for the wind. It seems like it's gotten really windy here, but we're going to keep plugging away. We're getting closer. So I am going to go ahead and snug those up, but I forgot to show you guys what the difference is. So basically this is set back to give you an additional 2 degrees. So normally this is in the very center, and this is obviously the other side, but normally, like I said, this is in the center, but it sets it back to give you an additional amount of camber adjustment. So a lot of times, like I said, when you lower one of these things, they have some negative camber. Well, let's put some positive camber up to 2 degrees back into it, so you can have a nice and straight wheel and it can get aligned into spec. So I'm gonna go ahead, like I said, I'm gonna snug those down just a little bit. I'm not gonna tighten them, and then we'll get the new spindle assembly back into place. So before we put the spindle on, we do have to make a trim, and that is on this guy here. And the reason being is because it sticks down too far, it's actually gonna hit. Now, if you're not working on a 4-wheel drive, this isn't gonna matter, but what I do is I take, these guys come with a new bolt, and it's a little bit shorter than this. So what I do is I thread this on, and that's basically showing my cutting point. The instructions say 3/8 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. And so this ran all the way up, is right in between those two numbers. So run this up here. And it also works as a thread chaser. I always like to put something on because obviously we're going to cut this off, this end of this stud, and then we'll basically be chasing the threads when we take this old one off. So that's what we're going to do, and then we'll be able to put the new spindle into place. And there is kind of a procedure of doing it too, which I'll show you obviously once I get this cut off. Now that we're ready to put the spindle in place, I want to show you guys the old one beside the new one. And so you have 2 inches of lift on this one, which brings the truck down. So that's where we obtain 2 inches of drop. So we're ready to put that thing in. And sorry guys, once again for the wind, it's just crazy out here today. But while we're putting it in, we have to thread this through the center, obviously. And if you guys are running a smaller than a 17, so basically a 17-inch wheel or smaller, you are going to have to use a supplied nut and trim this bottom one, kind of like we did the top one. If you're not, like I'm running a 20, so I'm not going to trim that off, and we will be using the factory hardware back on this bottom ball joint. So let's go grab that thing, get it into place, and start tightening some stuff up. Now, one thing that's extremely important before you put this in is you need to grab what holds the hub together and put it into place. These bottom 2 aren't as necessary, but the top one for sure, because you're not going to have access to it once you thread this on. So you can see you won't be able to put the bolt in, it would run into it. So that is what we need to do. Go ahead and just loosely thread the bottom one on. And then I'm going to grab my jack and put underneath it, and we'll get the top one into place. We probably could, well, it looks like we may be able to get it started anyway. We may go ahead and tighten this up, or at least snug it down. And I'm going to go ahead and put my tie rod end into place as well. Just keeps this thing from spinning around when you're trying to tighten stuff up. Makes things a lot easier. So now we need to torque this top bolt to 37 foot-pounds. Now how are we going to do that? You're going to have to use a crow's foot. Basically what I do, guys, is I just get it nice and snug. 37 foot-pounds isn't very much. If you have a crow's foot, I suggest doing that. The bottom goes to 74, and then up front here goes to 37 as well. So for your tie rod end. Now, if the bottom one likes to spin, I don't have a 24 millimeter, so I'm having to use an adjustable end wrench, but 8 millimeter will fit in the center of this if you didn't have to trim it off. If you had to trim it off, obviously it won't fit, but 8 millimeter fits in the center and keeps this thing from spinning while you're tightening it up, because chances are it's going to spin. So we'll get it, once you get it snug, when you're torquing it, there's not an issue. But before that, yeah, it's probably going to spin. So that's how you combat it spinning. Now we can go ahead and torque it. 74 foot-pounds is what we're putting on this. And I have to cheat it a little bit because I don't have a deep 24. So you can see I put my socket on first. And there's 74. Now we just need to do this to 37 and we'll be ready to put the hub into place. I'm basically doing the same thing here because this wants to spin as well. Once we get it snugged up, then we can go ahead and torque it to the 37. So now we're ready to put the hub back into place, and it goes on just like it came off. Now obviously you have to remember that this has to line up in the center of the spline. Sometimes you have to turn it from the back side here. There we go. And then we have to thread these 15 millimeters back in. Now the top one, guys, is kind of a pain, and these guys get torqued down pretty tight. So they get torqued down to 133 foot-pounds. Which is pretty snug. So on this top one, the only way you can do it, I basically put a wrench in there, an open-ended wrench, and I put the closed end on it, and then I use a pry bar to just get it as tight as I can. There's no way, even with the crow's foot, you could get in there. The only way to tighten that up differently would be to take the axle out. So you'd have to take that out and put it back in once you got it together. And so I'm not going to do that. So we're just going to have to thread these in by hand till we get them all most of the way down, and then we'll get in there and torque them down to 133 foot-pounds. Now that we have all that tightened down and torqued down, the hub itself, we can go ahead and put this back in the center here. Now this does get torqued to 175 foot-pounds. The problem is you can't torque this until it's on the ground. So what we'll do is we'll leave the center out of the wheel, and we'll torque it once we have something on the ground to keep it from spinning. That snug down, we can go ahead and get our brake back into place. So I'm going to go grab my rotor, and then we'll put our caliper and bracket. We'll unhook it back there and move it up into place. your 18 millimeters that came with it. Make sure that you have those handy, because that's what you're going to need to tighten it back up. So once we get that on, we'll talk about the torque specs for it. Now that we have those 218s snug down, we can go ahead and torque them to 130 foot-pounds, which is quite a bit, but when you have a big long torque wrench, it's not as bad. It is easier if you turn the wheel, as I've done. So now we can move on to putting the brake line back into place and the ABS line. So now we're ready to put our brake line back into place, which we took this out of our old spindle, this 10 millimeter here. And it does set in a channel on the other side, which I will have to commend Beltec on this. They thread all the holes, so in case for some reason it doesn't fit in one, you can put it in another. But that one goes there, and then we have the other one that goes on the top of the control arm here, so our brake line goes up on top. Of course I dropped it. But then this goes into place just like the factory piece, which is very, very nice. It's gonna make a liar out of me. Trying to hold the camera and do it at the same time isn't working. There we go. Once we get that into place and tighten down, I'll grab my 10 millimeter here if I've got it handy. You know, guys, I've broken these before. They're not very heavy duty, so don't get real crazy tightening these. Just snug. Same thing with this up here. Now I did press this out of the old A-arm. If you turn it over, if you try to pry it out, it'll break, but if you turn it over and try to press it out with like a screwdriver, that's what I did there. So we'll open those up. We'll get this line stretched back up into place and into its original location. Like this one's already open, so we can put it into there. And then obviously we need to plug the ABS line back in up top. Pretty close to being finished. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this bump stop out, and I'm going to cut just this bottom nub off, basically. You still want it to come in contact with this here. That's part of the way the suspension works on these, but I don't need that much. It could potentially keep it from going as low as it needs to. So once we do that, then we're going to lift this whole assembly up and put a load on it and go ahead and torque these down on both sides. So basically our A-arms. So you can see how much I cut off the bottom. Now we're kind of experimenting, guys. I may end up having to buy a new set of bump stops for the front of this thing, but for now this is what we're going to do. And now we can go ahead and tighten up these A-arms. You can see that I've got my block underneath lifting on the bottom A-arm, putting pressure on this. Now we can go ahead and torque these to 140 foot-pounds. Now I've got my marks lined up that we started with, and so make sure that you have those lined up as much as possible, and then go ahead and torque them down. Now that we have those torqued down to 140 foot-pounds, you want to make sure that everything has been tightened up and we've gotten to everything. The only thing that we have left to do, obviously, we got to put the wheel back on and torque this center nut to 175 foot-pounds, but we need to go ahead and put some grease in the grease cert. So I'm going to do that. You guys don't need to watch me do that. So basically the next thing you're going to see is we'll get it on the ground. Don't forget to take your center cap out so you can tighten this up. Get it on the ground, tighten that up, kind of drive it up and down the driveway, let it settle out a little bit, and we will take a look to see if we need to move on to the keys. Two other things I want to tell you guys about after you grease up all your grease certs. I went ahead and hit all of mine, but you want to make sure that that stud that we cut off is not coming in contact, and it is not. I actually cut a little bit too much off of mine. Not a big deal. I've never had one back off, but it does say to score the end of that, so I did take a chisel and score that so it doesn't want to back off. Probably 3/8 of an inch is probably a better option, to be quite honest with you, than what I took off, but it's not going to hurt anything. So like I said, now we're ready to put the wheel on. We'll get it on the ground and torque this down. So guys, I took it down the road and I measured it out, and I'm gonna try to get over here where the wind's not as bad, but it's really close. It's about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch higher in the back, which is perfect. The problem is I've got 20 pounds in those bags, and that's about the max amount in the bags. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and put the keys in it. So I'm gonna lift this thing back up. I also got some new shocks for the back. I know I told you guys I wasn't gonna put shocks in it. We're gonna do a couple things in the back also, but let's get this thing back off the ground and get the keys in it, and that should get it where we want it. And then we'll also put in those new shocks in the back, and I do have to do some shorter bump stops. I think I've decided, I told you guys I was gonna buy some different ones. The thing is that, and you can't see them really anyway, but the problem with that is that I'm just gonna let those lay around. So I'm just gonna chop those off, and I'll just show you guys that process. But let's get this thing back off the ground. So to replace the torsion keys, obviously we've got it back off the ground, but you really don't need a ton of stuff. You need a torsion bar. It's kind of a release. You can also use a 3-jaw puller. A lot of people do this. I actually rented this from a local parts store. They generally have it on hand. I will also link it in the description if you guys want to buy one. But for what I'm using this for, I'm probably not going to do a ton of these, so it's worth renting it every time I'm basically going to use it. But you need obviously a socket or something to fit on the bottom of it, and then 18mm is what you're going to need for the bolts. Now I did go ahead and spray this with some WD-40 to loosen things up. You can see that I sprayed up in the channel of the key we're going to be taking out, and there's your adjustment, which is an 18mm, this guy right here. So basically what we do, and I'm not going to be able to show you guys because I don't have a tripod this small, but we put that tension reliever on the top, and then it fits in this spot right here. And then once we relieve the pressure off that bolt, we can go ahead and run the bolt out, and we can take the keeper out that's right here. So once we get the tension off of it, then we should be able to slide the torsion bar forward, get the old key out, and then I'll show you guys the new key, which is this guy, and I'll show them side by side so you can see the difference. Obviously they're indexed different. That's where you get your lowering. So I'm gonna go ahead, get that on there. I might show you guys once I get the tool on there kind of how the placement goes and kind of steps through that. Like I said, I don't have a tripod small enough to get under there to show you the whole process, but I'll try to cut to each process that I'm doing. So now we have the tool installed, and I put enough pressure on it to loosen this. You can see how loose that is. Now we can go ahead and run that 18mm bolt out, and then we can take this center piece out that holds the bolt, because we have all the pressure off of it. And you'll know you have pressure off of it when you can move this up and down. Obviously without it, if you still had pressure on it, you wouldn't be able to move this. Now once we take that bolt out and this piece, then we'll be able to loosen the pressure on this, and hopefully the key won't be rusted on. We'll be able to pull it straight off. Now you can see that I have the keeper out, that and the bolt are on the ground over there. So now all we need to do is relieve the pressure off this, and you'll see that start to turn down, and then we'll hopefully be able to slide the bar forward and then get the old key out of the way. Now you guys are able to see that all the tension is off of it. So you can see I'm moving it around. Now we just need to slide this forward enough to get the key out. I'm gonna have to use 2 hands, but then I'll show you the keys side by side so you can see what they look like. So I got the old one out. I did have to tap it with a hammer a couple times to loosen it up, but I think spraying the WD-40 really helped. But you can see the difference in the indexing. So this is lined up. You can see you have a longer arm here. It's a way more adjustment. So I'm not looking for a ton. I'm only looking for about a 1/2 inch, but like I said, I had these bolts ran all the way down and they're hanging pretty low, so this will fix both of those issues. We should be able to get another 1/2 inch, and our bolt shouldn't be hanging down so low. So I'm gonna grab the new one, we'll put it into position, and then of course guys, one thing you need to make sure of is obviously this points down because your adjuster goes into here, and then your tool to hold it goes here. So I'll show you guys once I get it up in the truck before I actually run it down and get things back together what it looks like. Now you can see the new key is into place, and this is the way it says to orient it. And now all we need to do is put our tool back on and basically reverse this process. Then we'll go to the other side and do it, and then the hardest part will be to actually dial in the height that I want. So we've got the new one in, and you can see I have my adjustment bolt ran all the way up to the top, and that's where we're going to start our adjustment. So I basically went until it stopped. We'll take it down the road. Well, once I get the other side done, I won't show you guys that. It's the exact same process, but once I get the other side done, we'll set it on the ground, drive it back and forth up the driveway, moving the tires back and forth, and then we'll make our final adjustments. This is kind of one of those trial and error things, guys. You're going to have to drive it up and down the road, make sure it settles out, and then you'll have to come back and make adjustments as necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and knock the other side out, and then we'll take some measurements and kind of see where we're at. Installed, took it down the road. As you can see, we're back up in the front, which is fine. That's fine. We just have some adjustments to make. So it was right at 31 3/4, 31 1/2-ish in the front. Now it is just a hair under 33. So we obviously have to move it, and I will say that the driver's side is just about 1/4 of an inch difference. So I'm going to lower one side a little more than the other, but I'm going to basically jack this thing back up, get under there. We're going to loosen those bolts that we ran all the way tight, and like I said, this is going to be kind of a trial and error. Then I'm going to drive it up the road and make sure it settles out, and then we'll test it again. So don't think that this is going to be a just install and done. This is something that you're going to have to tweak, and after I actually get it where I want it, I think I'll probably drive it a couple miles up and down the road just to make sure that it's not slammed right before I get it aligned. So obviously we got to get an alignment after this, but basically I'll show you guys once I get back from the next drive, and if it takes another one and so on, but we're getting close. So I'm now on my second drive. We are at it came down quite a bit. It came down about 1.5 inches, and I turned it 7 times. So I counted on one side, counted on the other. I did take the driver's side just a hair more because it was a little higher, and still is by about 1/8 of an inch, but I think I want to go about another 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to get under there, I'm going to turn it one more time, and that should do it. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to take it down the road a little further this time and make sure everything settles out fine, but I think that should be it. And I might take it maybe a 1/4 turn more on this side just to get it even on both sides. We are now at 31 1/8 in the back, and we are exactly 1/2 inch higher, or sorry, 31 1/8 in the front, and 31 3/4. It's almost exactly 1/2 inch, which is exactly what I wanted. That's with no air in the bags, and we'll talk about that later. But now I want to get this thing off the ground because I did buy some rear shocks. The rear shocks I was going to try to cheap out, not put shocks on it, guys. They are bottomed out, and I also need to cut down that bump stop, like I said before. I was going to buy new ones, but those other ones were just going to sit around. I might as well just cut them, and so that's what I'm going to do. Let's get the back end of this thing off the ground. I'm going to chalk the front wheels, and we'll replace those shocks real quick. Now that we got the back off the ground, you can see how close my bump stop is. I've actually released the suspension, so it's almost setting on it at all times. So I'm going to cut the 2 upper ribs off, and I'm just going to use just a saw. I'm not going to take it off. It shouldn't take much. They're pretty pliable, so I'm just going to cut that off. I probably won't show you guys that process. I'll show you once I'm finished. But for the shock, we're going to need a 21 millimeter, and same thing on the top. And there is a bolt that goes from the back side, so the nut is on the outside, and you can pull this out enough to get access to it. So we're going to go ahead, knock those loose, and I'll show you what we're going to replace them with. Now that we got that old one out, we are ready to replace it. And yes, I bought Beltec Street Performance. Guys, I've had great luck with these, and you guys know that I'm a big McGoy's, sorry, I can't say it, McGoy's fan. So one thing I will say is Beltec makes great shocks, especially the Street Performance shocks. That's what I always use on 90% of my build. Even on my truck, I ran McGoy's suspension, but I used Beltec shocks. So I'm going to put these into place. We'll get them tightened down. Now I'm going to torque them once I raise the rear end back up and get the tires and wheels on, but I can go ahead and get these into place. And like always, guys, these will be listed in the description down below. now that we got the top installed, I am going to go ahead and torque that just because my access is limited with the tire on. So it's 60 top and bottom. I probably won't show you guys, well, I'll show you me torquing the top, but the bottom, like I said, I'm just going to do once I get the wheels back on. Once you have the suspension raised back up with the lift, I'm going to put my jack stands under it, let it set on that so I can torque them down. So now that I have the jack stands supporting the rear end, all the weight is on the truck, we are now ready to torque the bottom of this down to 60 foot-pounds. And guys, that is it. We are going to get it aligned. And so the next part in this video you're going to see is this thing all cleaned up, aligned, and slammed. So guess what? We are finished. We are back from the alignment shop. It's actually been a couple days, guys, since I got it back from the alignment shop. We've had some crappy weather. As a matter of fact, it's 28 degrees right now, and I came out here, that's why my driveway's all wet, as I washed this thing, and there's icicles hanging from the bottom. I'm absolutely frozen. Absolutely frozen. It is so cold. I don't recommend washing cars. I have a hot water outlet in my garage. I don't generally use that. I fill my buckets with hot water. That makes life a little bit easier. But what do you guys think? I love it. Like I said, I got it back from the alignment shop. They did have to lift the front just a hair to get it into spec. I will tell you guys though, with those A-arms that I put in, I don't think you could get, it gives you an additional 2 degrees of camber, and that's where they were having the issues with the camber. I don't think you could get it in spec without those. So if you're gonna go this low, you're gonna have to have those guys when you do the drop. But I love it. I think it looks absolutely, it looks awesome to me. And the wheels look nice with the, I probably the 22 would look better, I'm not gonna lie. But the 20s, with that size tire, obviously we bought that tire knowing that we were going to this amount of drop, or at least I knew I was going to this amount of drop. Other than that, guys, the, I'll go to the other side here in a minute so you can get a better profile picture, but I was able to get the valve in here to fill up the bags. Now these bags are quite a bit different than the bags on the truck in the fact that those are rubber and these are kind of like a nylon style, and those will go up to 90 PSI. These will only go up to 20. You can put a trailer on that and then air those bags up, whereas these you need to put the air in it before you put the weight on because you could potentially pinch the bag and puncture it. But it's got about 5 in it right now. That's the minimum that you need to keep in it, and that gave me about a 1/2 inch of rake. I know it doesn't look like that from the angle right now, but it actually is a 1/2 inch of rake. It's just the way my driveway slants. But haters are gonna hate, guys. I know there's a bunch of haters out there that think I shouldn't lower a 4-wheel drive, but hey, we lower everything. You know, obviously slam. Trans Am is so slammed I could barely get it off the lift. As you guys can see, I'm shuffled some cars around, so we are going to be doing some stuff soon on the SS and soon on the Trans Am. Hopefully the Trans Am gets it some love. It hasn't had it in a while. It's really dusty and dirty, and I had a terrible time getting off the lift because it's so low. I'm gonna have to make some adjustments there too. But guys, tell me what you think. I want to hear. If you hate it, tell me. If you love it, tell me. I know that this isn't the most popular mod on a 4-wheel drive is to slam it, but to me it works absolutely flawless. Had some snow, like I said, we drove through it, no issues whatsoever. 4-wheel drive works, and almost zero body roll now. It handles so much better. I like the profiles, guys. So like I said, if you like this video, like always, please smash that thumbs up button. If you guys are not subscribed, you gotta go down and subscribe. We got a ton of stuff coming. We still have some stuff to do on the Tahoe. We gotta get rid of these absolutely nasty looking lights that are obviously really yellow. Look at the difference between those are replacements and these are not. So we got to do something there. We need to paint correct this thing. We need to do a ton of stuff, but it's been so cold that I just haven't had a ton of time to do that. But guys, like always, I'm going to put some pictures of your rides at the end of this video. If you guys don't know where to send those, my email address is twamotorsports@hotmail.com. If you have any questions about the parts that I use, I'm going to list them all in the description like always, so you can go down there and pick those up. I will have every single part that was used on this build in the description. And guys, stay tuned to see what we work on, buy, sell, slam next.